Hello, my name is Andrew Gondy. Today is the 15th of February, and you are currently listening to the Critical Conversation podcast. Now, today I'm joined by my co-hosts again, Ted and Liam, but
Hello.
we also have one other guest in the room with us. We're joined by our guest feature, Patrick Magargee.
Hello there.
Hey, now I know Patrick. I know he has a very thoughtful, pensive way of thinking, and he's most well-versed in the topic we will be discussing today, which is abortion. And you can find him on Instagram at patchmag576. So we wanted to conduct today's episode, just with some comments, thoughts, a good monologue from Patrick, and just really hand it over to him, and then also have some just questions for him to answer for us and all of you.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you today, Patrick. We're
Thank you.
looking forward to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to get us started off, we'll start off something simple. Can you give the listeners a quick history and definition of abortion so that we all have a baseline understanding from where we can launch?
Yes, of course. I'll start with the definition. So abortion is defined as the intentional killing of a human fetus.
Mm-hmm.
So before 1973, abortion was only completely legal in 4 states. It was under certain circumstances legal in 16 states and illegal in 30. But then a case called Roe v. Wade was brought before the Supreme Court. If Roe won this case, abortion would be federally legal in all 50 states. On January 22nd, 1973, the votes came in 7 to 2 in favor of legalized abortion. The justices argued that the right to privacy includes a woman's decision to end the life of her preborn child, effectively through all 9 months of pregnancy.
I find that very interesting that they consider that a right to privacy. I wouldn't think that would count under a right to privacy.
What about the right to life? That's the undermining question, really.
Yeah, I just find that interesting that of all the rights that you could consider it under, why privacy? That's something
Right.
I'm very.
Now, also, I mean, you've given us just this brief history, but obviously this was started a number of years ago. How do you think this has really changed or molded our culture? Just either negative or...
Well, I do have a quick thing to say about
Yeah, go ahead.
about the right to privacy. They established that, and that's what a lot of people use as their argument of why it's constitutional, but I will get into this later during the monologue, but the judge also said that if the preborn child is found to have personhood, then it is, if prenatal personhood is established, the case for abortion collapses, for the fetus's right to life would then be guaranteed specifically by the 14th Amendment.
Now, here's this is really where things get interesting, because if you're going by this judge's statement on that, then you really should believe that most abortions should collapse, as he said, because we witnessed this in President Trump's State of the Union, which we did an episode on. One of the guests he had in was a baby that was born at, I believe, 22 weeks. That's halfway through what's considered a normal pregnancy. And babies are constantly aborted around that rate. And the interesting thing is, they seem to want you to think that at that point it's just a blob of nothingless cells, but as the president really exemplified, and as this child itself showed, that is a cognitive being that has life, that has a brain.
Yeah, he was capable of surviving on their own, and it's impressive. That is a feat of modern medicine right there.
Right.
Something to take
And
that
I saw this from you, Patrick. Just a little illustration you gave that an abortionist idea of a baby is just the whole timeline of weeks leading up to birth. It's just this blob of nothing, and then immediately at birth it becomes a baby. But in reality, science shows us that it's a growing, maturing human being. That, and also when do we see like developments in a child, like as far as having a brain and having really just the basic blueprints for life?
Yeah, again, I'll get into this a little bit later, but at week 3 weeks after the point of conception, the baby's heart begins to beat, and that is about the same time that a mother discovers she's pregnant. And at 22 weeks, the baby can actually survive outside the womb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really a process. It's not just nothing, and then just becomes something.
Yeah.
So we'd like to take this chance for Patrick to just jump right into
What he has prepared for us today.
Yeah.
And we can all hopefully learn something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to add a little bit about the history of feminism. So today, pro-choice feminists viciously fight for abortion to remain legal, but feminists were not always of that mindset. Alice Paul called abortion the ultimate exploitation of women, and Maddie
Mm-hmm.
Brinkerhoff stated that when a man steals to satisfy hunger, we may safely conclude that there is something wrong with in society. So when a woman destroys the life of her unborn child, it is an evidence that either by education or circumstances she has been greatly wronged. These feminists fought valiantly for women's rights, but they wholeheartedly rejected the prospect of abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And with the bills being passed, like the one in New York recently did, it seems that the country is heading even more towards born infanticide. I say born because abortion is really just infanticide, but in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
But President Trump currently is the most pro-life president in American history, and has shown it by appointing pro-life judges, cutting off government funding to Planned Parenthood, speaking at the March for Life this past January, and more. If Roe v. Wade was overturned tomorrow, abortion would not be illegal. It would actually be up to each individual state to decide whether abortion should be legal or not. It remains a struggle, but I do pray that our country would see the truth that abortion really is murder and should not only be made illegal, but unthinkable.
Exactly, because it's not. And that's actually an interesting thing that abortionists really bring up, is that they make it all about the mother. They bring up the argument about choice, saying, like, what about the choice for young women whose life will be ruined by an unwanted pregnancy?
If you view having a child as ruining your life, you should not be partaking of what creates a child.
Exactly. And that statement really demands a deeper question. What is the unborn? Because if the unborn is in fact a human being, as we saw in the State of the Union, we cannot choose one person's convenience over another person's life. The inherent right not to be killed should always, rank higher than the right to be free from hardship or inconvenience.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to take some time and explain my arguments for the pro-life stance and my refutations against the pro-choice stance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the information that I'm about to share was gathered from a site called liveaction.org. It is a very good resource, trustworthy, and I definitely recommend it if you have questions about abortion.
All right, you can find that link right down in our description below.
Yep, liveaction.org. So we already defined abortion as the intentional killing of a human fetus. And this definition begs no questions and is affirmed by many on both sides of the debate. The thing is that a lot of people that oppose abortion think that three men like us sitting here can't share our opinions because we don't have uteruses.
Yeah, exactly.
However, there's no such thing as a women's perspective on abortion that discredits anything a person with a different perspective may think.
Right.
In fact, feminists, let alone women in general, have many different perspectives on the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Gender is really irrelevant. It is arguments that must be advanced and defended.
Mm-hmm.
So my thesis is in the lines of a syllogism. In logic, there's an idea that's called a syllogism. It consists of two true premises that lead to one true conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
For abortion, the syllogism is as follows. Premise 1. It is morally wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Premise 2. Abortion intentionally kills a innocent human being. And therefore, this is the conclusion, abortion is morally wrong.
Exactly.
So I intend to prove that unborn babies have equal value to full-grown human beings, to disprove common pro-choice arguments, and to give clarification on reasons abortion may need to remain legal. So first off, I just wanted to start. A human being is a biological term, and a person is more of a moral term. Are all human beings persons? Do all human beings
Right.
deserve human rights? Do
Mhm.
only some human beings have value and worth?
Exactly. A lot of people really, like I said, just because you can't see it, just because you can see the mother but not the baby, does not mean that the baby does not deserve any standing.
Right.
Mhm.
And every time in history that we have claimed that a group of human beings or persons are not persons, are undeserving of human rights, and are without worth, it has led to a horrible tragedy.
Yes, just look at slavery, look at the Holocaust. It's all because of that basic principle and premise.
If you view a human being as not a person, if you take away their personhood, it gives you liberty to do what you want to them.
And I would like
Yeah.
to establish the fact here today that a baby at 22 weeks is and can be a human being. Even
Oh.
before that, a baby has a heart, it's beating, it has
It
fingerprints.
has unique genetics
It-
from its parents.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And there's an easy way to prove that fetuses are in fact persons and not only human beings.
Yes, and technology like the ultrasound has really helped us get to that point.
Well, yes, that helps us see it. But the acronym is SLED. It stands for size, level of development, environment, and dependence.
Mm-hmm.
First, size. Fetuses are very small, but it becomes apparent that size is irrelevant to an individual's value. Is an infant less valuable than a football player? Is Kevin Hart less valuable than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Yeah.
If you were zapped by a shrink ray to be only 2 inches tall, are you less valuable?
Is Danny DeVito less valuable than anyone else?
Of course not. So, size, we can see, it doesn't really matter. Even though the fetus is small, it doesn't take away its personhood.
Mhm.
Second is the level of development. People say it is okay to abort preborn babies because they don't have the same level of cognitive ability we do. Well, then, should infants be denied personhood because they can't mentally outperform a cat or a dog?
Mm-hmm.
Many adults have severe mental handicaps, but we don't hold their lack of rationale as grounds to count them less
Exactly.
than persons. Others say it is okay to abort babies because they haven't developed the feeling of pain. Well, then, is it okay for an adult to be killed painlessly while they sleep? No, not at all. That would be murder. Rats have the ability to feel pain, but no one counts them as persons.
Mm-hmm.
So it also becomes
Exactly.
clear that the level of development, that doesn't determine whether it is a person
It's not
or
relevant.
With time, they will develop, and
And there
Right.
are people that, again, there are people that are born with a disease that prevents them from being able to feel pain. And we don't take away their
Right.
personhood.
Exactly.
That would be despicable.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
But honestly, the same thing is happening here with abortion. People just don't realize it because you can't see the baby that's being aborted.
right. And that leads to the third one, environment. Does it matter whether the baby is in or out of the womb?
No.
It is crazy to think that killing immediately before birth is morally okay,
Mm-hmm.
while killing immediately after birth is murder. It's really the same thing that you're killing,
And
just a
actually,
different environment.
Some people think that's unthinkable, but the current governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, actually made a statement on believing that up to the moment of birth, abortion should be legal. So it's just very interesting how far these people are willing to go, and it's honestly
Yeah.
sickening to a point.
And then the final one, the D in SLED, is dependency. Some say that personhood begins once the baby has viability, once it can survive outside the womb on its own. But toddlers can't survive on their own. They must be cared for.
Right.
So does that mean that 2-year-olds aren't human?
Yeah.
Nope. All of this is to say that personhood begins at conception. No person should be deprived of their basic human rights.
Mm-hmm.
There are also those that believe that people with disabilities are less worthy of life.
Right.
Ending the life of an unborn child because of a disability is wrong. It comes from the idea that people with disabilities are weak and need to be weeded out from society.
Yeah, exactly. Saying that choosing to choose a baby based off of whether it's, quote, what just a normal functioning human is, as opposed to if it has mental illness, it's despicable to assume that, oh, I want my life to be easier and more convenient by not having a handicapped child, so I'll just make this choice.
Right.
It's
That view is unjust and tragic because they're persons too. They have equal worth to a child that is that doesn't have disabilities.
mhm.
So instead of killing those who are different, we really should be celebrating their lives.
Exactly.
And we should be taking care of them. That's
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that God calls us to do. You can't. It is very selfish to abandon your child because they have a disability, and even worse so to kill your child because they have a disability.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there's one thing to say: you can't some disabilities are extremely expensive to take care of, and some
Mhm.
people can't take care of that child properly with their current situation. But I think that's a good grounds to adopt.
Exactly. There are plenty of other
you can
options. There's
put your child
right.
up for adoption if you can't fiscally afford to take care of them, and you know that they'd have a terrible life.
Mhm.
Well, here's the other thing. Okay, so I have a 2-year-old here in front of me. Its mother can't take care of it because she doesn't have a job. She's unemployed. They're living on the streets, and she really has no way to take care of this 2-year-old. So because of that, I think we should just kill it right here. What do you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah, that's
Should we? Should we?
It's completely immoral when you put it in actual perspective in terms like that.
Well, if you're willing to go that far, and why not kill the mother? At that point, she can't really take care of herself much.
Exactly.
Doesn't have anything. So if that child
Right.
is now valueless because it can't be taken care of,
When rights only become about the mother, then nobody really deserves rights by those
yeah,
standards.
where do you take? How far do rights go? Who deserves them? It's hard to say when you start choosing that when there's no objective truth to who deserves value, and it becomes relative. Then who's to say who deserves rights and who doesn't?
A right stops becoming a right when it only applies to one person.
Exactly.
And the answer is no, we shouldn't kill that 2-year-old. Why not? Because it's a human being. And goes the same for the fetus inside the womb. We just identified that fetuses are human beings, and not only that, but also persons with equal value to somebody who is fully grown.
Mm-hmm.
Now- I'd like to address the first pro-choice argument, and that is, it's okay to kill a fetus because we don't really know when life starts. If we didn't know when life started, that's all the more reason not to have an abortion for fear of killing a human being. If you were hunting with a friend and you got separated, then you heard rustling in a bush, would you shoot? Of course not. It might be a deer, or it could be your lost friend. In the same way, it would be reckless to kill a fetus not knowing if it was human or not. Luckily, we know it is a scientific fact that life begins at the point of fertilization or conception. When a sperm fuses with the egg, a unique mix between the parent's DNA is created. Only 3 weeks from the point of conception, the baby's heart begins to beat, as I mentioned earlier. This is about the same time a mother discovers she is pregnant. At 8 weeks of pregnancy, the baby's brain begins to develop and doesn't stop until its early to mid-20s. 12 weeks in, the baby has fingers and toes fully formed with nails. They have fingerprints at 14 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
At 18 weeks, the baby's ears can hear music and recognize their mother's voice. And it is possible for babies to survive outside the womb at 22 weeks.
Yeah.
While in the womb, preborn babies can smile, cough, feel pain, yawn, hiccup, cry, respond to light and sound, sleep, and possibly dream.
And let's be honest, this is when abortions are happening.
Right.
So,
Third trimester abortions are at a point where the baby can survive outside the womb reliably.
to say that the baby is nothing completely denies the scientific fact that, like you just said, this baby can smile, it can think, and it can feel pain. I do believe that babies feel pain when they're murdered in the womb.
It's rather disturbing the way that they are often. I don't know if we should get into that here because, again, it gets rather disturbing to the point of...
Yeah.
It's rather vulgar.
And as I just looked up, many abortions happen at 24 weeks, when babies can survive even weeks before that. Somewhat miraculously, but still, it's still a human being whose life that you're canceling, and you cannot deny the fact that you're taking it away.
And it doesn't even matter the viability. It's the fact that it is a person from the point of conception. It's still a morally wrong thing to do. It's really telling that an atheist and pro-choicer, Dr. Peter Singer, states, Quote, there is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is a human being, end quote. There are thousands of scientific resources that agree life begins at conception. Abortion does kill a human being, and to say otherwise is to ignore the scientific facts and miss the miracle of life. The next pro-choice argument that I wanted to get into is a very popular one. It's one that a lot of feminists will whip out when asked, and that is, it's my body, my choice.
Yeah.
Women should have bodily autonomy,
Mhm.
but babies in the womb are separate bodies.
Right.
If a woman is carrying twin boys and they are a part of her body, then she has 6 eyes, 3 noses, and is mostly male.
Right.
A woman's right over her own body does not include the right to end the life of an innocent, separate human being. In addition, the father is required to pay child support for 18 years, but he doesn't get the opportunity to say, my body, my choice. When a woman claims that it's her body, her choice, it sends a signal to men that they don't need to worry about it because it's her problem. And that's really sad to hear.
Yeah, it's the baby can't exist without the father. The father is half of the child.
Right. So now onto the legal side of things. Pro-choicers may say that abortion is constitutionally right, so there are no legal issues with it. And I got into this a little bit earlier.
Uh-huh.
The justice who wrote the Roe v. Wade opinion, Harry Blackmun, made an important admission. He wrote, quote, if prenatal personhood is established, the case for abortion collapses, for the
Right.
fetus's right to life would then be guaranteed specifically by the 14th Amendment, end quote. The 14th Amendment was written after the Civil War to ensure that no human being would be denied basic constitutional human rights. The 14th Amendment reads, quote, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, end quote. So this leads to the question, are preborn children persons? As we've established earlier, yes. Additionally, Jacob Howard, a framer of this amendment, said that its purpose was to, quote, disable a state from depriving not merely a citizen of the United States, but any person, whoever he may be, of life, liberty,
Right.
and property without due process, end quote.
And like you said, just because this fetus or this child does not have, quote, property, or really the ability to survive if it were immediately placed out of the womb. But like you said, we don't take those rights away from a toddler or a disabled adult.
Well, yeah, there are adults that don't own property, and they aren't taking away their personhood.
Mm-hmm.
So, considering this amendment, it is clear that abortion is also constitutionally wrong.
Violating the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
And it's rather sad that this isn't called out. And the fact that won in the Supreme Court case, when they very clearly had that information before them, is kind of disappointing, I must say.
Well, the information was a little bit clouded back in the 70s, so I will grant them that. The next one is making abortion illegal will lead to overpopulation and more world hunger. Mass slaughters are crimes against humanity and should never be proposed as the solution to any human problem.
Right.
The idea of mass killing to solve overpopulation is the stuff of supervillains like Thanos.
Right.
In China, over the last 40 years, they have killed 400 million people. These atrocities are committed in the name of combating overpopulation. Overpopulation is actually a myth. The world is not running out of resources. The Earth currently holds about 7,500,000,000 people, but with the current resources and agricultural technology, we could support double that. Yes, there are still hungry people, but it isn't because of a shortage in food. It is because of corrupt governments, poor distribution systems, ongoing wars, and civil unrest. The problem is actually underpopulation. Around the world, birth rates are dropping, labor is decreasing, and the number of the elderly is increasing.
Yes, because since the beginning of abortion, over 20% of the United States population has been aborted.
Yeah. This is a recipe for economic stagnation. Overpopulation is not only a dangerous myth that results in the tragic loss of life, but it also results in economic problems. The solution is to stop cutting down the next generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next misconception I will bring up is that making abortion illegal will only lead to women getting illegal, dangerous abortions.
Right.
First of all, there is no such thing as a safe abortion. One person is killed and the other is harmed. Legalizing abortion did not make it less deadly for women. From the 1940s to the 1970s, deaths due to abortion decreased because of better medicine, not legal abortion. In 1972, 39 women died from illegal abortions and 24 died from legal abortions. In 1973, the year of Roe v. Wade, 19 women died from illegal abortions and 25 from legal ones. Deaths may have decreased as medicine got better, but there are many physical and emotional harms for women who have had abortions. Some of the increased risks include suicide, future infertility, pregnancy loss, breast cancer, and damage to our internal organs.
Yeah.
I'm just an important clarification. I'm not saying that any of this will happen, but there is an increased risk in that happening.
Yeah.
as a result of abortion.
In a lot of cases, it's not Planned Parenthood, it's banned Parenthood. It's just, it's,
Sadly, yes, it's
and that might be a minuscule margin that ends up either hopefully never dead, but infertile or diseased. It's
And-
such a minuscule margin that it's constantly overlooked, but it's still there.
the argument that making something illegal will increase the chances that someone will do it illegally, or decrease the chance that someone will do it illegally. It's like saying, oh, we should legalize all drugs because, well, people are just going to try and get them on their own anyways, and maybe if we
Mhm.
legalize them, it might be slightly safer. Well, no. As a
It
result
just
of that,
opens up the market for harm.
more and more drugs will pull in.
Right.
It's a nonsensical argument to say that if we were to ban it more, it'd be more dangerous. People will just seek dangerous at-home abortions, back alley abortions. Which,
Right.
Yes, people will do that. It's very sad, but that's what will happen in some
Just
cases.
like if all drugs are to be banned, then
some
are
people
gonna
will still.
exactly they're gonna
you
go to
look
their
at the-
shady drug dealer
yeah,
down the
you-
street.
Yes, it's quite simply that's just what happens. If people want to do something, they can do it. Even if it's illegal, they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's
Same with-
not the government's responsibility.
Same with the firearms, as the same as drugs. You can take away people's firearms, but the criminals are still gonna.
You can still get the firearms, and you can
Exactly.
still accidentally kill yourself with it.
But back to our main topic in
Yeah.
Patrick's monologue.
Yeah. So, after Roe v. Wade's institution, the number of abortions has skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
Over 60 million children have been legally killed by abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Legalizing abortion has not made it safer, it has only led to more deaths of children and harmed more women. Now, a thoughtful person may say, I think abortion should be illegal, but what about in cases of rape? It's not the women's fault.
Right.
Rape is a horrific crime, and the offenders must be locked up. The mother is left with the result of the rapist's crime, but abortion does nothing to give the woman healing she needs and deserves. Abortion doesn't undo rape. Instead, abortion subjects the woman and her child to another act of violence. As many rape survivors have testified, abortion is actually an obstacle to healing after rape. It
Right.
adds trauma to trauma and adds another innocent victim.
Exactly.
It's not fair to punish a child with a death penalty because their father committed a heinous crime.
Mm-hmm.
Abortion is not the loving course of action after an assault. Instead, women should look for help from local women's services that offer support, not abortion.
Yeah, and we don't say this as to crush down on the women and say they're so evil because a lot of times it's just young women that are they don't know what the other option is. So it's really our job in many cases to make them aware that there are better, safer options, and obviously the option of saving a life should always, as I said, in every case the option of life comes before
Yeah.
convenience.
At
or comfort.
all costs, we should seek to save as many people as we
Mhm.
can from as many horrible fates as possible.
And I believe that abortion is one of them.
And
Exactly.
it does exist sometimes where the woman is forced into an abortion, whether
There-
it's by family members or
Or
by
by the-
friends or by her school.
There is also one thing that we should bring up is the occasional. I don't know if you plan on bringing this up later, but the occasional issue where if the child were to allow to continue to develop, it may in fact lead to the death of the mother.
Mm-hmm.
I will bring that up in a few paragraphs.
All right.
Oh, actually, the next one.
Haha. See the future.
Yes. Good job. I hope you're not a genie. Actually, I hope you are.
That would be nice.
Another astute person may say, I believe abortion is wrong, but what if the child would die anyway? Or if the fetus causes risk to the mother's health?
Yeah.
Parents are told that abortion is the only option for babies born with lethal diagnoses. However, this is completely wrong. Medically speaking, it can be very difficult to predict the long-term outcomes of many conditions diagnosed in utero.
Right.
But even babies with lethal conditions deserve respect and compassion. We should instead be focusing on bettering neonatal palliative care, which is compassionate medical care for terminally ill babies, alleviating pain and discomfort during the dying process. Unfortunately, many mothers carrying babies with lethal medical conditions have never been offered or presented with the option to pursue palliative care for their child.
Right.
All babies deserve to be born and shown compassion, even through the dying process.
Right.
As far as risk to the mother's life, there is no medical reason why the life of a child must be directly and intentionally ended with an abortion procedure.
Actually, there may be another option coming soon in the future. Recently, scientists, I cannot remember which state it was, but they successfully created an artificial womb, which they transferred a young a lamb from the womb of a sheep into this artificial womb, and were able to successfully continue it for about 10 weeks, and then birth the lamb, and it's now alive. So if this
Right.
technology is able to continue, those situations where the baby may, if it were allowed to develop, may kill the mother, in this situation, you may be able to have essentially an emergency C-section, remove the baby, place it into the artificial womb. That way, it will no longer pose a threat to the mother and will be allowed to continue to develop.
Mm-hmm.
So as
That
long
would be
as,
interesting, something to keep an eye on.
yeah, as medical technology progresses, we may be able to, if we look for other options, we will find them in time. And I think it's wrong to just take the easy way out in that sense.
I think that it's great that people are trying to find technology that would help to save the life of children.
Yeah, of children and the mother too. Because again,
And the
there
mother,
are
yeah.
cases where the fertilized egg does not reach the ovaries in the right place,
That's
and
right.
then it develops. And if it were to allow to grow, it would burst the inside of the mother.
An ectopic pregnancy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'll get to that in a little bit, actually. The situations where the mother's life is in danger include high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and other very serious medical conditions. Sadly, some babies must be delivered before they can survive outside the womb. These situations are called preterm deliveries
Mhm.
and not abortion. Delivery is actually much safer than a late-term abortion for the mother. There are a few situations where the mother must be treated in a way that tragically results in the loss of the baby's life.
Or a miscarriage.
Receiving these treatments is not an abortion. It is a medical solution for a condition. For example, if a mother has cancer and chooses to undergo chemotherapy, that treatment may result in a miscarriage. The treatment is different from abortion, though, because the purpose is to save the mother's life and not to kill the child.
Right.
There is a treatment for an ectopic pregnancy, which many confuse with abortion. An ectopic pregnancy, like you were
Yes.
pointing out,
Mhm.
Ted, is where the embryo implants in the mother's fallopian tubes or elsewhere rather than in the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
This results in the need for the removal of the embryo because it will inevitably end in a miscarriage and the mother will be put at risk.
Right.
This procedure is still not an abortion because abortion unnecessarily ends the lives of children and may also result in serious medical and psychological harm to the woman.
Right.
The physician's duty is to save both the mother and the child's lives.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think just one last thing we would like to cover before we wrap up here is what are some ways that we can really get active against this cultural wave which hurts not only society but women, the thing that it claims to be for.
Yeah.
What can us and what can our listeners do to implement the most good?
So one thing is to do is to not be personally pro-life. This is the wrong line of thinking. If we acknowledge that all abortion destroys human life, then we should be opposed to all abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Every human has the right to not be killed, and that's why we can't just be personally pro-life.
Right.
Since 1973, like I said, over 60 million babies have died to abortion. This is the greatest civil rights crisis of our time. We as Americans, but more importantly as Christians, need to protect innocent life by educating on preborn life, exposing the horrors of abortion, giving charitably to new parents, ministering lovingly outside of abortion clinics, and adopting a foster parenting.
Mm-hmm.
A very easy thing to do is to post something about your pro-life position on social media. So remember the syllogism from the beginning. Premise 1, it is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Premise 2, abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, the conclusion, abortion is morally wrong.
Yeah, thank you.
Some organizations that you can join in order to help with the fight include 40 Days for Life. The spring campaign starts February 26th and goes through April 5th. There's also a March for Life in Harrisburg that's May 18th. The DC March for Life happens every year.
The recent one, I believe there was 100,000 people that came to the DC one.
Sounds about right. I was there. There were a lot of people.
And from what I've read on statistics, it's majority young people about our age and a little older.
Yeah, I think.
And about equally male and female, which I found interesting.
I think our generation is really coming up to just see this as what it is.
Yeah, if you were to just go on what you might see on MSNBC or other news organizations, you may think that all pro-life people are old white men who are angry and hateful of women. But in reality, you see that it's both men and women and majority young people that are fighting for this.
I would also recommend Scott Klusendorf. I took a lot of his notes and put them in my monologue. I definitely recommend him. Have to give him a shout out. Live Action. I took a lot of my notes from them. Liveaction.org.
All right.
Students for Life is a great way for students in high school and college to get involved. And the Radiance Foundation from Ryan Baumberger. It's also a great resource. All
right. That was really good. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Patrick. It's really excellent insights on this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun having you today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, you can go ahead and you can subscribe to this, or subscribe to our channel here, as well as give us thoughts in the comments. You can follow Patrick Magargee on Instagram at patchmag576. And also, if you're at all interested in a feature like this one today, you can email us at thecriticalconversationpodcast@gmail.com.
And Andrew, I would just like to send the listeners off with this one last 1-minute soundbite.
Yeah, of course.
This is an easy way to answer the question, why are you pro-life? I am pro-life because the science of embryology establishes that from the earliest stages of development, you were a distinct, living, and whole human being. You weren't part of another human being, like skin cells on the back of my hand. You were already a whole living member of the human family, even though you had yet to mature. And there is no essential difference between the embryo you once were and the adult you are today that justifies killing you at that earlier stage of development. Difference of size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency are not good reasons for saying you could be killed then, but not now.
All right. Yeah. Thank you all. This is The Critical Conversation.